to presidency of the organization called the Conference of College Composition and Communication. And that organization is the world's largest organization devoted to the study of writing across all disciplines and contexts, has typically between 3,000 and 5,000 members. So, some of my goals today, I typically like to narrow the focus into 2 or 3 goals so that you have specific nuggets that you can focus on applying. So the first thing is to increase our understanding of linguistic diversity, equity, and inclusion, to address the implicit biases we have about students who speak and write in different languages and other varieties of English. So when we talk about writing English, we often don't understand that there are world Englishes. The English that is spoken and written in India is not the same as the English that's spoken and written in Australia. It's not the same as the English that's spoken and written in Canada. And it's not the same as the English that's spoken and written in the United States. And then I want to give a few nuggets of best practices and how we respond to student writing for speakers of other Englishes, languages, and language varieties. And as a side, you'll understand that I include the term language varieties as opposed to dialect. We often talk about dialects, but when we're classifying languages in terms of those of us who work in linguistics, I'm sharing this single definition of what constitutes a language or a dialect. The organization that we're going to talk about today, it's equivalent to presidency of the classified as languages and what should be classified as dialects. Here's one example. Oftentimes, an organization called the Conference of College Composition and Communication, and that organization is mutually understood between speakers. But when we look at the world's largest organization devoted to the study of writing, varieties of Chinese that are not mutually understood by speakers, but those things are classified as dialects when they're actually across all disciplines and contexts, as typically between 3,000 and 5,000. Precise definition of what a language or dialect is, but we often, in terms of sociological members. So, some of my goals today, I typically like to narrow the focus into 2 or 3 goals so that you have specific nuggets that you can focus on. Do this together briefly. And so I have a just general question for you all. What makes writing good? So the first thing is to increase our understanding of linguistic diversity. Okay? What else? Makes writing good. You say, oh, that's a good piece of writing. What do you mean? The equity and inclusion. To address the implicit biases we have about students. What else? When it's inspired you, it's inspiring. Absolutely. Other students who speak and write in different languages and other varieties of English. What does that mean? It's insightful. So when we talk about writing English, we often don't understand that there are world. Sometimes it's precise, and I like how you said sometimes, because different pieces of writing have Englishes. The English that is spoken and written in India is not the same as the English. Thanks for sharing. I knew that I was waiting for that one to come up. And actually, grammatically correct is not grammatically correct. Either something's grammatical or not. That's kind of redundant. English that's spoken and written in Australia is not the same as the English that's spoken in. If it's not correct, it's not grammatical. But we always say grammatically correct. Don't worry, I'm not picking on you. This is written in Canada. Same as the English that's spoken and written in the United States. What makes writing bad? And then I want to give a few nuggets of best practices and how we respond to student writing for speakers of other Englishes, languages, and language varieties. And as a side, you'll understand that I include the term language varieties as opposed to dialect. We often talk about dialects, but when we're classifying languages in terms of those of us who work in linguistics, I share this definition of what constitutes a language or a dialect. The organization that we're going to talk about today, it's equivalent to presidency of the classified as languages and what should be classified as dialects. Here's one example. Oftentimes, the organization called the Conference of College Composition and Communication, and that organization organization devoted to the study of writing. Varieties of Chinese that are not mutually understood by speakers. Those things are classified as dialects when they're actually, when it's called this context, as typically between 3,000 and 5,000. Precise definition of what a language or dialect is, but we often, in terms of sociological measures. So, some of my goals today, I typically like to narrow focus into 2 or 3 goals so that you have specific nuggets that you can focus on. Do this together briefly. And so I have a just general question for you all. What makes writing good? So the first thing is to increase our understanding of linguistic diversity. Okay? What else? What makes writing good? You say, oh, that's a good piece of writing. What do you mean? The inclusion. To address the implicit biases we have about speaking. What else? When it's inspired you, it's inspiring. Absolutely. Other things and write in different languages and other varieties of English. Talk about this and how. What does that mean?
It's insightful.
It's insightful. So when we talk about writing English, we often don't understand. What is that word? That there are real people. Sometimes it's precise, and I like how you said sometimes because different pieces of writing have Englishes. The English that is spoken, written in India, is not the same as the English. Thanks for sharing. I knew that I was waiting for that one to come up. And actually, grammatically correct is not grammatically correct. Either something's grammatical or not. That's kind of redundant. English that is spoken and written in Australia is not the same as English that's spoken. If it's not correct, it's not grammatical. Yeah, there is some error. Yeah, so there's a misspelling there. We always say grammatically correct. So don't worry, I'm not picking you. This learn it. That's a run-on sentence. This is America when ordering speak English, no punctuation. Another run-on sentence. Yeah, wrong part of Europe. And this one's my favorite because sometimes I have the sense of humor of a 12-year-old. And it says everyone has a right to be stupid, and really there should be a comma after stupid, because anytime you have a conjunction, you put a comma before the conjunction. But it says but, but B-U-T-T, not the wrong but, so we call that a homophone. Words that sound alike that are spelled different when they're used wrongly. And then again, you're abusing that privilege. Welcome to America. Now either speak English or leave. Oh, geez. No punctuation. English spoken. It's the English that's spoken and written in the United States. What makes writing? Once you speak English or get out. Actually, the United States doesn't have an official language. Did you know that? It does not have an official language. Now, there are 31 states in the United States that designate English only as the official language, but nationally, federally, there is no official language. So, why do we have to speak English in America? We don't live in England, right? And then, I support making English America's official language, which signifies there is an official language. And then I want to give a few nuggets. So next slide. So from there, we talk about some of these ironies about oftentimes you'll find that those who are most dogmatic about correctness often don't know all of the rules in terms of the etiquette American English linguistics. It's a best practices. And how do we respond to student writing speakers about English in relation to DEI? The first myth is that we think, oh, we write an academic paper. It's got to be written in what we call standard American English or ended American English. As I just shared, there is no one standard. There are multiple world Englishes. So in Australia, the other languages and cultural varieties. And as a side, you'll varieties as opposed to. We call it a rubber band, but it's not something we use in the Midwest. It's often something that's used in the Northeast. So that's just one example of a vocabulary difference. So, and also just linguistically, we all, for the most part, are born with the facility to use language in something. It's dialect. We often talk about dialects, but when we're classifying language is better than the other, its language is cultural, it's socially constructed. Also, broken English or incorrect grammar, punctuation, all those things. That means that's a sign that there's a problem with communication. So, all language varieties have blends and mixtures of language and have in terms of those of us who work in linguistics. Chair of this work definitely American English. We often think of that as broken English or incorrect English. For example, using like I ain't got no multiple negation. But there are other countries and languages like Russian, like French, like Spanish that also use multiple negation. So of what constitutes a language